Happy Monday, Bears fans. Welcome into Chicago Bears Now by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Harrison Graham. Thought we'd take a look at some free agent targets following the 2022 NFL Draft. Take a look at 10 players I think that could make sense for this roster. This is my updated needs for Chicago following the draft. Top two, not really a change for me. I still think offensive line, especially among that starting group, could use a player or two, for sure one at right guard. Wide receiver, I think you could still add another weapon for Justin Fields. Defensive tackle, I thought the Bears might draft one. They did not, so I think maybe adding a proven 3-tech could be a spot to look out for, because we know that that's a position that the Bears feel is important for this defense. Linebacker, I think you need to add another player there, and then edge as well. That's not as big of a need, but I think you could never have enough pass rushers at the end of the day. So before we take a look at 10 players I think the Bears could sign now that the draft is over, what do you think the Bears' biggest need is after the NFL Draft? Get your votes in down below, and after you do, we'll take a look at 10 players in free agency. All right, let's take a look at some free agent targets for Chicago. Number one, Will Fuller, as we'll take a look at a couple of receivers right here. Fuller, who is still young, 28 years old, and can stretch the field for you on the outside. I love the player. I hate the injuries because he is hurt a ton, and I do mean a ton. But you get at this point in free agency, maybe you gamble. Maybe you get him for super cheap, 1 year, $2 million. With some incentives or something like that. If he's healthy, I think stylistically he fits with Justin Fields quite a bit, who's a good deep ball thrower, and Luke Getsy, who I think is going to want to challenge defenses vertically with this passing attack. I still think he has something in the tank. Can he give you 12 or 13 healthy games? That's a question that, is very much legitimate as we enter this stage of his career. T.Y. Hilton, who has also had some injuries later in his career, but is a guy that Matt Eberflus knows well, obviously, from Indianapolis, can still run, can still challenge defenses vertically. I don't think he'd be a guy that would necessarily start or give you, 75% of snaps, but could he come in, run some go routes, and, be a 40 to 50% snaps per game type of guy? I think he could still be that. There's some chatter that he could retire. We'll have to wait and see what he wants to do and if the Bears are interested. How about Jarvis Landry, who is probably the best receiver that remains unsigned in free agency? A different type of receiver from Will Fuller or T.Y. Hilton. Can play outside and slot, but he's primarily a slot receiver. He's not much of a vertical threat. He's more of a QB-friendly, third down type of option, right? He gets matched up on linebackers and safeties in the slot, takes advantage of those mismatches, and is a key guy to pick up, 10 yards on 3rd and 8, stuff like that. He's not going to give you a lot of chunk plays, but he is a reliable weapon. Curious to see what his market is. He wants a ton of money still. Not sure he's going to get it. If that price has come down, I would be interested. Now, name a receiver that the Bears should go out and sign. Other guys include Julio Jones, Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley. I mean, there's guys out there that would help upgrade this roster beyond just the ones that I mentioned down below. So let's hear it down in the comments section. Now, Justin Fields jerseys are available at chatsports.com/FieldsJersey, and if you want to go purchase one today, you can do so. Represent QB1 entering his 2nd season. Link in the comments, link in the description of this video. The prices always vary. Sometimes they move up, they move down, depending on when you're watching this, so go check it out, chatsports.com/FieldsJersey. Let's go to the offensive line, which is certainly a need for Chicago, especially right guard. You think about this offensive line. Quinton Spain is the guy we'll talk about here. Trey Turner got signed earlier today by Washington, so he is off the market. But right now, you don't have a starting right guard. It's Dakota Dozier or Sam Mustipher or one of these day 3 draft guys for Chicago. I would sign Spain to play right guard for this year. You've got your starting center in Lucas Patrick. You've got Cody Whitehair at left guard. I think Tevin Jenkins will start at right tackle. I feel okay about those 3 starters. Larry Borom, we'll see at left tackle. Could he move to right guard if he signed a tackle? Maybe that's an option. But I would feel a lot better if he signed a veteran to either start at right guard or at left tackle. If you fill one of those spots and then you're a little uncertain in one of the other ones, okay, like you're not going to feel good about all 5 guys this year. I get that. But you need to fill one of them, in my opinion. How about Eric Flowers, who's had quite the career? He started with the Giants at left tackle and was absolutely atrocious as a high-round draft pick, but left, played pretty well at guard for Washington with the stint, with Miami with the stint, ended up back in Washington, got cut for salary cap purposes, but he's at least a league average guard. Is he great? No. Is he special? No. Is he better than Dakota Dozier? Yes, and I do think he would be pretty cheap for the Bears. Now, I mentioned Larry Borom. Right now, I think he'd be your starting left tackle. Will that be the case in Week 1? Type Y for yes, type N for no. Will Larry Borom be a Week 1 starter on this offensive line? I think it's a legitimate question as we enter the month of May. 5 more players to take a look at here. One more offensive lineman. Eric Fisher. Look, I'm still in the camp of if you can get Fisher on a team-friendly deal, I still think he's a starting caliber left tackle in this league. I don't know if he can get back to pre-Achilles level, but I think he can play better than last year now that he's more than a year removed from that injury. Started slow last year coming back from the injury, but picked it up later in the season. He's at least proven at the end of the day, and I want to protect Justin Fields to the best of my ability. Thank you guys so much for 47,000 subscribers. We crossed that milestone this morning. You guys are the best. Quick round of applause. The road to 50,000 well underway. We're less than 3,000 subs from getting there. We continue to publish daily videos just because the draft is over. We're not going to go on a sabbatical and take a couple of weeks off like some other YouTube channels will. Daily shows are live stream tomorrow. No different there. 4 o'clock Eastern, 3 Central. We're going to have you covered. Hit that big red button and subscribe for daily videos, news, rumors, live streams, and a whole lot more here on Bears Now. Next up is Larry Ogunjobi, who obviously signed with the Bears, at least agreed to verbally, as the first big free agent splash for Ryan Poles on day 1 of free agency. Agreed to 3 years, $40.5 million. They brought him into the building 3-4 days later for his physical once the quote-unquote legal tampering period came to an end. But he failed a physical stemming from that foot surgery after the playoffs. You got to wonder if there's still interest between the two parties. Number one, he hasn't signed elsewhere. That's for sure. He's been working out. He's been posting clips. Now, a lot of you asked me, you see him working out with those Bears weights? It's got the C on them. That was debunked. That was a high school gym that just had a similar-looking logo. I'll be honest, it caught my interest, but that proved to not be the case. But we know that was emotional for Ryan Poles. You got to think if he's healthy, Poles would still have interest there, and so would Eberflus for this defense. 1 year, $6-7 million to start him and Justin Jones on the interior. You could do a lot worse if that ended up being the case. How about Akeem Hicks if you want to bring back a familiar face to play interior on this defensive line? Now, there's been some questions. Can he be effective as a 4-3 guy? Obviously, he's dealt with injuries in recent years. Here's what I do know. He's a fan favorite. That's number one. Bears fans love him. He loves Chicago. I think he wore out on the old regime, but that regime's gone. No one is still here at the end of the day. He spent a lot of time and played a lot of high-level games for Chicago. You look at his career numbers, 31 sacks over 77 games as an interior guy, really good run stopper. He's an energy guy. He's a leader. He rallies the fan base. I mean, Akeem Hicks loved being a Chicago Bear. Could it still happen? I think it's at least a possibility at this point in free agency. What do you guys think? Should the Bears re-sign Akeem Hicks? Type 1 for yes, type 0 for no. I would at least have interest if I was Chicago, so get your votes in down below. One more defensive tackle here. How about Ndamukong Suh, who, listen, he say what you want about Suh, but he's still good at 35, 36 years old. 12 sacks over the past 2 years. 6 last year, 6 the year before. Now he's 35, 36. One would think he'd probably want to go play for a contender. I think he tweeted out that he'd like to go back to the Bucs. So, if they'd like to bring him back, that's probably where he'll go. But if interest wanes around the league, maybe the Bears could poach him and bring him in. He's still an impactful player at this stage in his career. I would love to see him back. Or not back, but play for the Bears if you could get him for cheap. All right, last but not least, Anthony Hitchens, the veteran linebacker who we've talked about several times here, has connections to both Ryan Poles and to head coach Matt Eberflus, played for Eberflus when he was the linebackers coach in Dallas back in the earlier 2010s. Obviously, Poles knows him from being in Kansas City over the last several years. Took a visit to Hallis Hall last month, so I think that's notable as well. They brought him in for a visit. Now, maybe they didn't like what they saw, or they were too far apart on contract discussions, but there has been a discussion there, and I think, quite frankly, you could use a third linebacker. You've got Roquan Smith, you've got Nick Morrow, but some question marks behind that. I think Anthony Hitchens would help you feel a lot better at that position. Now, who's your top free agent target for the Chicago Bears? I just took a look at 10 players post-NFL Draft Edition. Gather your thoughts. Name one guy in the comments you'd like to see Chicago add. All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Appreciate you guys for tuning in here on Bears Now, youtube.com/Bears Now. That is the place to subscribe. Share that link with a friend. We'll see you tomorrow, 4 o'clock Eastern, 3 Central Time for Bears Now live here on YouTube.